There was a time, I remember it fondly. 2011, I went to London for a training in fMRI data analysis. I went to Fortnum & Mason, wonderful department store, and I bought my first Yardlet there. Since I've sold that one, but it was the Retro Grande in B.R.E. Very nice pen. And at the time when I reviewed it, 2011, this is a long time ago, children, I said the nib was silver. I was fairly new to fountain pens. They had told me there that the nib was silver, and it was a falsehood. And people pointed that out and said, that's not possible, Brown. You can't have a nib of silver, it's too soft, but it's 18K, that's right, but it's 18 karat gold. Then I contacted Yardlet, not because I doubted what people were saying, but because I was now curious. And the CEO of Yardlet at that time emailed me back and said, no, you were misinformed. This is actually gold, and we use nickel plating, which I'd never heard of. The rhodium plating, yes, but we use nickel plating so that the nib trim matches the silver that we use in our pens. Why am I telling you all this? Glad you asked. The reason I'm telling you this is that I was contacted by a friend through Instagram who said, I make on a very small scale, we would say micro scale, using brewery terms, I don't even drink, I make nibs, and I would like to make you one. And I said, okay, cool. He did, he sent me one. I'm not showing it to you yet, I'll show it to you when I tilt the camera down. And so he made me an interesting nib. It's number 8. It's made of silver, so you can do it. After all these years, you can do it. Turns out you can. It's very interesting. It's very broad. It's very wet. He made it that way. And he sent it to me. Now, I'm not going to review this nib because I asked him, is it your interest to sell these nibs? He said, no, I'm not a professional silversmith. And so I don't want to sell it. I just made a couple for friends. So first of all, I like that I'm your friend. Secondly, it's a very cool nib. I just wanted to show it because I think it's cool. I'd never seen a silver nib. It's lovely. Now bear in mind, the person who makes it, he's not a professional. He's not a professional silversmith. So don't expect necessarily something that looks ultra polished, but it's a fantastic writer. And that's why I wanted to show you. So we have something with a feed that he makes, with a nib collar that he makes, that fits B.R.E 380, so B.R.E number 8 pens. And it's lovely. Again, it's not a review because he's not going to sell them. So if you really want to know, you can email me and I can tell you who he is. And maybe if you ask really, really, really nicely, he might be willing to make you one, but it's not his goal. So don't ask me if you're not serious about it. There we are. I'm going to show you off this nib. Again, it's not a review. It's just kind of a session of me playing with a nib. There we are. I hope that's going to be entertaining, and a very kind thank you for making me this nib because it is a lot of fun and people have commented on it. I was in a meeting a couple days ago and someone said, I was sitting behind you, sort of like a theater, and I kept being just focused on your pen and what you were doing with it. So that was not a euphemism. I was writing with a pen and she was interested in what was happening. So, fascinating nib. Let's look at it. Okay, so what do we have here? Here we have this silver nib number 8 made by my friend. It doesn't come with a pen. The pen is made by William Shakur. He swore never to do these again. This is a triangular model. He 3D prints these. They're very cool, but they take number 8 nibs and they have a huge ink capacity. So for this nib, you definitely want that. Let's talk about the nib because that's what we're really here for. I'll make sure there are some good close-up pictures on the website. Let me just zoom in a bit so you can hopefully see this a bit better. This is right next to a Pilot Metropolitan nib, so that's about a number 5 nib. It's a big nib, but it's a number 8 nib, so that's what you would expect. And if this is, you're kind of new into the foray of pens, number 8 simply means that the feed diameter is 8 millimeters. Okay, so in this case it would be about 5 millimeters. This is about 8 millimeters. Silver nib, it will tarnish. It has a very interesting texture to it, which I'm not sure you can see very well, but it does have very fine lines on it. Again, I'll try to have good pictures on the website. And there is this feed, which is also homemade. And there is a nib collar, which I can't show you because there's ink in this pen, but the nib collar is kind of a clear material, and it fits very well, I will say, into the number 8 pens I've tried to put it into. So B.R.E number 8 pens should be able to take this nib. It works well, and it is meant to be very broad and very wet. Now, of course, I can keep talking about this nib, but what probably makes a lot more sense is if I show you how it works. So let's do that. Sorry, let me zoom out a bit. And what I thought I would do is just give you a bit of a comparison of some other pens so you get a bit of a feel for it. This is a Visconti. This is one of their old style 18 karat gold nibs, and this is broad. And the ink here is Mont Blanc. This is their toffee brown. So that would be a broad 18K Visconti nib. And then here we have a pen that a pen that the same William Shakur made. This is my great exposition. This is a double broad titanium number 8 nib. So here we have, and this is just a B.R.E. This is a double broad, and this is titanium. And this is a very wet nib. This is B.R.E brown ink. And as you can see, very wet, very interesting, very pleasant. Let's look just again very quickly at that Visconti. It's a little less wet, but it's quite nice. And then we have this special silver number 8 nib, which is fantastic in case there is a vampire around, for example. The number 8 nib. Now, this is broad, and this is wet. And when I say this is wet, there is puddles of ink on the page. And this is, of course, B.R.E brown, a fantastic ink, if I say so myself, because the amount of shading there is insane. Something that I really enjoy and appreciate myself. That's why I had it designed that way. Now, if we start to do normal writing, because what you're thinking is, oh, but you can't do normal writing with that. Yes, you can. I've been using this for normal writing. Now, of course, this is a very broad nib, so you may have to adjust your handwriting a little bit so that it's a little bit bigger than it usually would be. But if you do that, it works very well. See? I have no issues with this. I can even write 2 separate lines right after the other and not run into any issues. Now, this is a bit of an italic grind, very nice broad downstroke and narrower side stroke, but very pleasant. And what I have found to be super cool about this nib is that it just keeps going and going. Because I thought initially when I started writing with this, I thought, well, this is such a broad, wet nib. Surely this is just going to run out of ink. It's going to run dry. It's going to have feed starvation issues. It's going to have all this. It doesn't. It keeps going and going and going and going and going, and it does not run dry, which I think is a very interesting property for such an incredibly wet nib. Also, this pen usually because it has massive piston filler inside, takes me weeks to empty, but with this pen it's just with this nib it's a couple of days because it is so broad. Now, to me it looks good, and I know that there were people who say, again, bear in mind, the person who makes it is not a professional silversmith, it's just a guy just doing this. I cannot do this, I will tell you that. Tipping on the nib, there's a lot of tipping. It's very smooth, and again, very pleasant writer. Now, one of the things that I have found to be very interesting with this particular nib is that it's a great signature nib. This is not actually my signature for legal reasons, but this is my unofficial B.R.E brown signature. Because it is so broad, you get a nice characteristic, what do you call that, full of character signature, and it is just so much fun to play with. Again, the wetness on this, it's insane, and it's so smooth. Now, are there any issues? Not that I have found. Sometimes when a pen has been stored in a pen case up like that, you get a little bit of, there's a bit of an issue where there is no ink in the nib slit. Can you see that? There's a little white hole, just a gap between the ink, and then it may stop writing, but then you kind of flick it like that and then it writes again. So I've really had no issues with it. I think it's a fantastic nib. I think it's absolutely wonderful. I really enjoy it. And even though I said this is not a review because you can't really get these anyway, I have had an enormous amount of fun with this nib, and I will continue to do so. And I'm very grateful that a kind friend made this for me. So there you have it. I hope this was at least entertaining, and I'm sorry they're not widely commercially available, but I just had to show it off, and I hope I'm forgiven for that just because it's so much fun, and I thought if I enjoyed it, there's a good chance you enjoy it. That's all that's to it. Boom. I hope you enjoyed it, and that's all. I'll gladly see you later for another review. Bye!